Well, welcome to Philosopher Rock. I'm your host GK, and this is episode 15, and I have a very special guest on board with me to discuss Cibo Matto. Now, my guest is a personal friend of mine, Frank Johnson, and Frank has been on a number of podcast shows and episodes, but I guess his most well-known online work is as a guest on Julian Charles's show, The Mind Renewed. I'll drop a link to Jules's website in the space below. Frank is also a published author under a pseudonym, which I have agreed not to disclose. He's a very interesting guest, and he's great to talk to on a wide range of subjects. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are going to get something out of this, and I hope you really enjoy it. So the topic of the episode is Cibo Matto, a group formed by Miho Hattori and Yuka Honda in New York City in 1994. Considered alternative, the band has released a number of studio albums and EPs, amongst other work, but the three full studio albums are Viva La Woman from 1996, Stereotype A in 1999, and Hotel Valentine in 2014. Now, as you're about to hear, some members of this band have had a lot of collaborations, including with the Beastie Boys and Sean Lennon, among others. Indeed, Lennon played bass for them for some time, as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure if he recorded with them, but he may have. We'll talk about that with our guest, I guess. So they're right into collaborating with others, which is something I find interesting and something I also like to do. I love this idea of collaboration when you share ideas and you move a project on in collaboration with other people, because a lot of the time it's not the best idea to be on your Pat Malone, but it's great, just to get with other people, share ideas. Doesn't matter what the topic is. Of course, here we're talking about music, but you could be sharing collaboration on many other things, and it's fantastic to see. I just like this idea of collaboration. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and towards the back end of the show, we're going to talk just a little tiny bit about collecting vinyl records, and we'll touch on price of vinyl here in Australia and in the USA, but just a little. I don't want to sound like make it more than it's going to be, but just a little bit about that. Just one more thing before we go to the show. There's a little bit of a hum on my side of the recording, which I've done my best to deal with during the edit, but occasionally it does pop up, but thankfully my guest's track is not affected. Okay, so now let's go to my discussion about Cibo Matto with my very special guest and friend, Frank Johnson.
G'day, Bruce.
G'day, mate. All right, that's good. Well, Frank, welcome to the show. Now, we're here to talk about a group that I haven't heard about before, and so I don't even know how to pronounce their name. And I guess I'm going to say I'm going to call you a fan. It's fair to say that. Is that fair to say that?
I'd say that's very fair, if underselling it a little bit, but yes.
Well, I've seen your collection. You've got the CDs, the vinyl, and everything pertaining to them and their connections, right? So, if I've got this right, we're going to be talking about Cibo Matto?
Pretty close, yeah, Cibo Matto. Yeah.
Cibo Matto, okay. All right, cool. Yeah. Anyway, well, thanks for coming on board, Frank. We're going to talk about Cibo Matto. And so I've already told our listeners a little bit about you and who you are. So I guess the first question really is, because I'm into lots of different styles of music, and I'm pretty much across, I think I'm pretty much across lots of things, but I haven't come across them. So how did you come across them?
It's a really kind of long and stupid story, but I'll be succinct. So, I could have come across them earlier, like in my last year of high school, but I didn't, because the singer, Miho Hattori, she appears on the Beastie Boys album, Hello Nasty, and I had bought that in my senior year of high school. So, I bought it for, the first, one song that was popular. I think it was Intergalactic, right? And then, I listened to, the first 7 songs, and then suddenly, the album is, pretty poppin', the first few songs, and then suddenly just kind of, and just kind of, it's quiet the rest of the album, and there's a few pop-up songs here and there. And then she's on one of the songs towards the end that I had never listened to. And fast forward from that, I had been working at this place, and there was another guy, he's a few years older than me, and he's a comic book nerd, and we would nerd out and geek out about stuff. And I don't know why, but he offered to let me watch his collection of, this is when DVDs of TV shows were just coming out and brand new. He offered to let me watch his collection of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and of all things, right? I was into the whole vampire thing, whatever. I was like in my early 20s, and I'm like, I had never watched the show, but I knew of it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I got nothing else to do. Why not? So, I started watching the show, and I don't remember what episode they appeared in, but Cibo Matto appeared on the show because they would have every so often they'd have a musical segment at the music club in one of their episodes, and it'd be some, new or independent talent, probably, under contract from Warner Brothers, like Cibo Matto was, I think. And so they appeared on in fact, their first album was a Warner Brothers album, which is probably why they appeared on Buffy, because I think it was a Warner Brothers show initially. So, I saw them performing the song Sugar Water, which is like their breakout hit from their Viva album. And I didn't know it at the time, but you can see, if you watch that scene, you can see Sean Lennon in the background playing bass. Yeah, it's really 90s looking. But yeah, that's how I discovered them. I was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I heard this song, and I'm just like, that song, there was just something about it that just like grabbed me, and I'm like, wow, this is just, there was nothing else that I'd heard like it at the time,
Yeah, so it was one of those, I get it, yeah, because that happens to a lot of us. You see or hear this act for the first time, and you go, wow, that's got me, and I want to know more. So it was one of those moments.
It really was,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just excuse me, man, but the dog is at my feet, and she's sitting there, she's snoring. I don't know if you can hear her, but when she snores, she's almost as loud as me.
Maybe she wants to.
Yeah. No. Well, anyway, we'll just crack on. But yeah, if you hear, I do apologise. She's asleep, and I'm not going to move her. She's at my feet, and she's comfortable and happy. Hey, listen. I know you know this. Music is music. And I always say, look, it's very subjective, and you can like what you like, I can like what I like, or whatever. But just for, say, someone who's listening right now that's never heard them before and never heard the name before or anything about them, what's the genre? Where do we fit them? Because sometimes it is good to have a classification, so you can say to someone, they're southern rock, or they're pop rock, or they're power pop, and you go, okay, I get an idea. Where do you slot these guys?
That's where it gets difficult. If we're just looking at their first two albums, even from each other, they're two very different styles of music. And then their third album, too, came out much later. So it's, again, even more different than either of those. And so, Miho, the singer, she had said that her personal style is that she has no style. So it's like, I feel, if you had to kind of label them, I mean, when I bought their albums, they were labeled in just pop or whatever, right? But like, it's just very generic and vague. I would say like their first album is very kind of like, it feels a little bit rough, but it's not really. It's like a very polished, rough, like I feel like it would be kind of something you would go listen to and you'd hear like at like a jazz club, or like not even a jazz club, but like a club where you're just sitting there and it's like a cafe or something, So I don't know how I would classify it. Their second one is definitely, their second album, Stereotype A, is definitely more radio friendly and very pop. That one would be way more accessible, I think, for most people. So that's where I would put those two albums, as each one would probably have its own genre. But their second album is definitely very pop. Their first album is,
so it's a bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, yeah. Very, very eclectic, Even on their first album, I mean, there's a few songs like Know Your Chicken that would be very pop friendly, I think, Now
that you've mentioned that, like,
yeah,
the name of the band means what?
It means crazy food in Italian, so I don't know how that came to be, other than, the singer Miho Hattori and the main musician, Yuka Honda, had been in a band together called Laito Lychee, I think. I might be mispronouncing that, but that's a type of food, And they went over to Cibo Matto. They changed the name to Cibo Matto, and then like their first album is every song title is a food of some sort, and some of the lyrics are also.
Yeah. So what's the food thing about? What do you know? Like what the fascination with the food thing? Because the band name is food, and you just said it.
Mm-hmm.
Know your chicken, and I know there's other song titles where it's to do with food.
Yeah, on that first album, they all are. Apple, beef jerky, Le Pen Peru is, I think that's like something to do with bread in French. Even I know your chicken. That's actually another play on an Italian phrase. I think. How does it go? It's like, there's an Italian phrase which translates to "I know my chicken." It's like I know who I'm dealing with. It's like I know people, I know my peeps. Is I guess what we would call it. But yeah, I don't know where were we going with this. Yeah, so how they came up with that? Basically, according to the internet, they're saying it originates because they had a shared passion. The two founding members, Yuka Honda and Miho Hattori, had a shared passion for food. And a mutual obsession. So they chose the name to reflect that passion. And
when was the first album released? Are we talking late 90s?
Yeah, late 90s. So the first album came out, it says in 1996, and I don't remember when Buffy the Vampire Slayer was on, but that sounds about right. I think it came on then and it ended about 7 years later, which was in the early 2000s. Yeah, so that sounds about right. I think maybe they were together performing like in 95, recorded, and then released it in 96,
And these are basis of the mainstays of the group are two Japanese women, aren't they, who have migrated to the United States?
That's correct. Yeah, they each one lived in Tokyo, and they even actually lived in the same area, but they didn't meet each other till later. And there's a whole story. Yeah, there's a whole story about how they've each emigrated to the U.S. In their different circumstances. Yuka Honda had married a musician, and then like they were together. And then I think when Miho Hattori was here, she was working at a record store, and somehow they met and had this like shared interest in music or something, and that's how they kind of formed their first band, and then like moved on from there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's the basis, but they have had a lot of, like you've already mentioned, the Beastie Boys, but they've had a lot of collaborations with lots of different people. But what is the Sean Lennon connection? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think through Yuka Honda, she has a connection with Yoko Ono somehow, and I think by producing music, like somehow they've had some collaborations together, and I'm not exactly sure how Sean hooked up into their band, but he ended up playing bass for them. It must have been after the first album was recorded, but when they were touring for it, they needed a bass player or something, and so that's why you can see him in an episode of Buffy. And he has a full bass credit on the second album. And in fact, they each collaborated on a song on his album, Into the Sun. So they basically did a Cibo Matto song on his first album, his first solo album. But yeah, he was in there. And then, I guess the main connection was through his mom, Yoko Ono. And then he credits them actually as teaching him everything he knows about, I don't know about performing, but like, touring and kind of doing stage shows and stuff. So it was they were very influential and helpful to him. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's the bit that sort of when you were telling me about it, we're just having private conversation.
Yeah.
We're having private conversation, and you mentioned the Sean Lennon connection. I thought, oh well, that's interesting. Because I know that he's done some of his own work, like probably back in the 90s, right? He had a couple of hits, didn't he?
I don't know if he had a lot of hits, but he did do an album of his own called Into the Sun, and that was released so the Beastie Boys, a couple of them kind of spun off their own record label called Grand Royal, and they released his first solo album under that label, and then another collaboration with Cibo Matto. They did Butter 08 under that label, Grand Royal. And then, I think even
Tell us a bit about that, because that's another food titled band. Who is Butter? Is it 0808 Butter 8?
Butter 08 or Butter 08. I don't know how they call it, but Butter 08. So you have Miho Hattori on vocals, and then Yuka Honda. Then you have Rick Lee doing guitar and bass. Mike Mills. The name sounds familiar, but I'm not 100% sure who that is. And then you have also Russell Simmons doing drums, vocals, guitar, and bass. And then guest musicians, Sean Lennon, Timo Ellis, who appeared on one of the other, I don't know who he is, but he's on on the second stereo or the Cibo Matto album. And, a few other people. And, this is kind of more of a rough, kind of, I wouldn't say punky, but kind of in that vein, like kind of very edgy album, but, which is strange that a Butter album should be smooth, but it's but I feel it's very rough and edgy, and it's just very much them just having fun. It sounds like doing music.
So I was reading this article about Miho Hattori, and I'll put it in the show notes so people can look it up themselves. I'll try and add as many links as I can in the show notes to what we're discussing, so people can go and have a look for themselves. But I noticed that she talks a lot about collaboration. This article came out in 2018, and she does speak a lot about collaboration, and it seems like that's a lot of her what she enjoys doing. At least I could say that. And I get that. I think I like it when people they like to collaborate with others, and they just don't it's not just all about me and pushing me out the front. I love collaborations because good bands work great and perform great live when everyone's working together and collaborating. But we all know that, the downfall of many bands, past, present, and it will be in the future, is when that one person says, no, I want more of the spotlight. When that happens. So I like this idea of collaboration myself. It's something that I'm into. A lot of my, podcasting stuff, other than, one or two projects I've done, I've liked to collaborate with others. I think it's really nice. And then, you don't feel like you're out there pushing yourself out there, even though, like, she's obviously very skilled. Okay. She's got skills, right? But she still is happy to share and collaborate. And I noticed in that article too, she talked about, this collaboration thing, and she says for her it's like oxygen. It's a very natural form of creativity. So that's the word I was looking for. It's part of her creativity is this idea of collaboration. Now, I've spoken a lot there, but if you look at her history and the history of this band, it's collaboration after collaboration, which is really nice. What do you think?
Yeah. I agree. As a fan of her music and her singing, I feel like it's really been great for me because it's like I've discovered so many other great bands because she's part of it, and like I think she sounds great in most of them. Like she had gone from, and all of them are different styles too. It's not so she's not just like pigeonholing herself into one genre. She did Cibo Matto, and she's also done the Gorillaz. She did a couple songs with them. She did like 2 songs on that album, and that was headed by the guy from Blur.
What album is
Damon Albarn.
What one?
That's the first Gorillaz album. She did I think she did vocals on 19-2000, and then she did it's been forever since I listened to them.
Right. Okay. But there you go. Another collaboration.
Yeah, so she did, she did that song on the Gorillaz album, and she might have had one more on like the the B-sides album, and then she did another, I can just list collaborations she's done. She did one song on the Baldwin Brothers Cooking with Lasers album called Dream Girl, which is a great song. My favorite though is she did two EPs, I guess. Is it EPs for the shorter ones? It's like a short album. She did 2 albums or 2 little albums called Smokey and Miho with a guy named Smokey Hormel. I think they I'm not sure exactly where they met. I knew the story, but have forgotten it. It's through one of her collaborations, but where they just do a bunch of bossa nova songs together.
So he's a guitarist, is that right?
He does the guitar, yeah.
And Brazilian? Is he from Brazil?
I don't think he is, but they both. Miho has a huge love for Brazilian music, which thankfully introduced me to Brazilian music too. But yeah, that's another great collaboration she's done. So, and she has her own solo album too, which was, I thought, pretty good. So,
yeah, what I'll do is as when I put this video up, as we're talking about these things, I'll show the albums so people can go and find them and have a listen to them for themselves. Because there is a whole lot of collaborations. So, is there any more that are important?
Oh, I think that's it. I mean, she's credited on one of the Yuka Honda albums as just kind of doing guest vocals. It's the Yukata mix one. Yukata mix. I don't pronunciation's horrible on that one, but I think that would. I mean, she's on the Beastie Boys Hello Nasty album. Gorillas. I think that's all the ones I have.
We can hear you moving your CDs around there, but I know you've also got the vinyl. I've seen the photos of the vinyl. You know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say you are a fan, bro.
I think so. Yeah. Maybe not the number one fan, but a fan nonetheless.
A fan, yeah. So listen, this is Philosopher Rock, right? So we like to talk about philosophy. So what do you think's going on? What is the philosophy? We have to be careful here because there's so many collaborations. You can't say this is this woman or these women's philosophy because you can't. There's too much going on. But is there something we can, hang our hat on and say that's what it's about? Or is it just too nebulous?
I think it's maybe a little bit both and. I think it is quite nebulous because, like, even if we just narrow our focus to just their, even their 3 Cibo Matto albums, the third one is called Hotel Valentine. I would say even just looking at the lyrics in those 3 albums, it would be very difficult to kind of choose pin a specific philosophy on them. I think the feeling I get just from their music, listening to the music and, reading some of their interviews and kind of just watching them from afar, I feel it is quite nebulous because, like, Miho talks about her kind of philosophy and stuff, and some of it comes off. I think she has some roots in Buddhism there herself, and then like Yuka Honda, she doesn't really come out in interviews much that I've seen or read. And then, like, if you look at Sean Lennon, he's kind of very anti-establishment like his parents, which is great. He's very much a proponent of this whole Nutopia idea that his dad had come up with.
All right. Well, tell us about that.
So Nutopia was kind of like John Lennon's kind of way to kind of flirt or, circumvent the system of immigration here to the U.S. It looks like.
Okay.
And I just reading the story that he had come up with for it. It's kind of funny. It kind of comes off as like he's just like this kind of famous guy trying to push the buttons and push the limits of what he can get away with, and like, and that may very well be part of what he was doing, but he also probably partly seriously believed it was like this idea that Nutopia is not like a real place. It only has people. There's no passports, no governments. The only laws are cosmic, which what does that even mean, So,
I think at this point I will explain a little bit about Nutopia, because it's probably worth it. Some of us might not have heard about it before, so it's worth a little bit more explanation. So I'm just going to read straight off Wikipedia here, and I'll put a link in the show notes. I'll add as many links as I can to what we're discussing here with Frank. But hey, listen, while I've got you there, if you're enjoying this, if you like the show, the best way to help promote the show is to hit like and add a comment. I do everything here for free because I love doing it, not asking anybody for money or any other assistance. But hey, if you want to help out Philosopher Rock or my 4550 show or this whole channel, hit like. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. and add a comment, and I'm sure in some way that'll help immensely. I'm not even 100% sure how it all works, but anyway. Okay, so let me read at least in part what this Nutopia is about. Nutopia is a conceptual country, sometimes referred to as a micronation, founded by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. One of the reasons that the country was founded was to address Lennon's then ongoing immigration problems. The previous week he had received a deportation order through satirical means, so to help his ongoing immigration problems through satirical means. As of April 2024, individuals have been able to declare their citizenship of Nutopia via a website. The call to join Nutopia was made through Yoko Ono's account on X and others. Nutopia is a portmanteau of new and utopia, which suggests Nutopia is a new utopian society. There is also the word play with nut, which is a slang word for an insane person, and utopia. So get it? Nutopia, Nutopia. The official declaration states that, now this is a statement made by Lennon and Ono, so John Lennon and Yoko Ono. We announce the birth of a conceptual country, Nutopia. Citizenship of the country can be obtained by declaration of your awareness of Nutopia. Nutopia has no land, no boundaries, no passports, only people. Nutopia has no laws other than cosmic. All people of Nutopia are ambassadors of the country. As two ambassadors of Nutopia, we ask for diplomatic immunity and recognition in United Nations of our country and its people. So that's their statement. So, I mean, they actually had an embassy, and it was originally located in the Tribeca neighbourhood in Manhattan. But I think it's moved since then. Yes, it was. It was moved later on. Lennon shortly moved this embassy to their Dakota apartment, affixing a gold plaque engraved Nutopian embassy to their kitchen back door. The flag of Nutopia has only one colour. It's white. Lennon's album Mind Games features the Nutopian International Anthem, which consists of 4 seconds of silence. And the hand-drawn Great Seal of Nutopia features a picture of a seal balancing on a yin and yang globe on its nose. So just before we move on here and get back to our discussion with Frank, I will point out something that I learnt a long time ago. This term utopia, it was a word coined in 1516 from the ancient Greek, but by the Englishman Sir Thomas More for his Latin text Utopia. It literally translates as no place, coming from the Greek ou, which is not, and topos, which means place, and meant any non-existent society when described in considerable detail. In his original work, More carefully pointed out the similarity to the word utopia, which actually transliterates as eutopia, meaning good place, from the Greek ou, good or well, and topos, place, which would be more appropriate term for the concept in modern English, okay, because we transliterate it as utopia. The pronunciations of utopia, that's the EU version, and utopia, the U version, in English are identical, which may have given rise to the change in meaning. Dystopia, a term meaning bad place, coined in 1868, draws on this latter meaning. The opposite of utopia, dystopia, is a concept which surpassed utopia in popularity in the fictional literature from the 1950s onwards, chiefly because of the impact of George Orwell's 1984. Now, in my opinion, because I've studied a bit of ancient Greek not that long ago, and I came across this concept. So in my firm opinion, really, there is no utopia. It is a non-existent place. I mean, the Greek tells us that. It's not a place. It's nowhere. It's nothing. So I think these ideas, my humble opinion, my philosophy, is there's no such place as utopia. It doesn't exist. So there's a bit of GK philosophy for you. Let's move on from this unpleasantness and let's get back to our discussion with Frank.
He kind of, I don't know how much Sean really subscribes to that. He does promote the Nutopia thing, and he's very. I would kind of expect him to be left leaning, but he really does not like the Democrat establishment very much, and he certainly doesn't like the right. So, I would say as a whole, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so it is sort of anti-establishment because both of those groups are, very well established, in the establishment, man.
Yeah. And I would say I would maybe even extend kind of some of that philosophy to maybe the whole group as a, entity. It's like they have kind of this anti-establishment kind of like they want to do their own thing. They don't want to be in the role someone else has defined for them. They want to just do their thing. They want to make sure it makes them feel good. And it seems like they want to make other people feel good. They want people to enjoy their music. One of the interviews I read a while back, I think Yuka and Miho were talking about their album Hotel Valentine. It's a concept album, they called it, where basically it takes place in like a haunted hotel or something, and you the listener have to kind of piece all of the data together to see, what the story is. Like you have to kind of unravel the story yourself. So they kind of like I feel like they want you, the fan, to kind of see what they want you to define it for yourself, maybe, if that makes sense.
Right. You make up your own mind.
When you get into their lyrics, I mean, a lot of them appear to be nonsensical. If you look at their first album, like it's a lot of just kind of food talking and kind of like just random, like a random word salad, it looks like, but like.
Word salad, I like that because we're talking about food. Go on.
And it's such a fitting, isn't it? So
yeah.
When you look at some of the songs, like there is maybe some hidden meaning behind it. Like you can kind of get a sense that some of it's maybe about intimacy or some of it's about loss on even the first album. The second album in particular, they used to have a website up that where they were talking, they showed the lyrics and then they talked about what the song was about. So like,
that'd be handy.
You can kind of, it really
does it exist?
It did. I don't know where it is anymore. I looked hard for it in preparation for this, but couldn't find it. But what I remember was, like the song Blue Train, like they had come up with that one just riffing on the bass and just kind of goofing around with each other, So they were like riffing and came up with a good, song for that. But then some of these other songs, they're about, sounds like maybe lost love, maybe perhaps. You kind of get a sense from the lyrics. The song Moonchild in particular, which has got like a creepy connotation thanks to, Aleister Crowley, has nothing to do with that, but it was actually about, Miho Hattori had a friend. I thought I remembered her friend had committed suicide. And so the song is about losing her, one of her best friends. And she's kind of like wondering about her friend's spirit, like what's going on with her, So I would say, some of their songs are definitely about just having fun and goofing around and like enjoying yourself, enjoying the moment. Others are, there's something more there, but, some of them are definitely defined with what they're about, and some of them I think you kind of have to interpret it yourself.
Yeah. So the word nebulous truly applies.
I think so,
yeah. But some are more what you might expect from people sort of with this sort of background philosophy. Maybe we could even say that comes out of the 60s,
I do feel a little bit hippie-ish in a way, but like different,
But a new hippie, the new hippies.
Yes, new hippies, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay.
Slightly more edgy, attitude.
Right.
Yeah. The 90s extreme hippie.
Right.
They're almost like seen as honorary members of the Beastie Boys. At least that's sort of the impression that you get because they had such strong ties with the Grand Royal label that the Beastie Boys had come out with. So they had actually really, because they're in New York City too, which is where Cibo Matto was. So they worked really close together on a few things. Hello Nasty, that's a Beastie Boys album from the late 90s where Miho appears on one song. And the Butter 08 and Sean Lennon's Into the Sun album, they had a couple more releases. I don't remember what they are. I don't think it involved them, but they were very tied into like helping each other succeed with that label. But unfortunately, it just kind of went under. I guess maybe one other interesting tidbit would be, I don't know when he came up with it, but Sean Lennon has his own record label now, Chimera Music. And so, Cibo Matto's third album came out on that label. Yeah, he's released his own stuff under that label.
So before we finish up here, Frank, and as a fan aficionado of all things Cibo Matto and Miho and it's Yuki?
Yuka.
Yeah, sorry about that. My RoboVac is actually called Yiko. And it's not very Australian. I was trying to get the voice control to get my RoboVac to answer to Bruce or to Trev, right? But it's called Yiko. So, I mean, if it's switched on and you say Yiko, and I've switched it off intentionally, if you say Yiko, it will respond, but it won't come to Bruce or Trev or any other very Australian or Kiwi name. So it's not working out here. But anyway, so back to serious. These ladies, their work that you've been collecting, if someone was interested, how do you, like, can I just walk into a music store or order online? Where are you getting because I know you've recently bought some new vinyl, haven't you, from them?
Yeah.
Is it new release or?
I think it's kind of new. I think it's been out for a while, because I remember seeing it at like a Barnes and Noble bookstore years ago, when vinyl was just starting to come back. And so I went into an actual music store, specialty music store, of which there are, you probably know this, but there's fewer and fewer of those around anymore. And they had, so you can get some of their stuff on vinyl and probably CD.
What was the vinyl one that you got recently? What was it?
I bought Viva La Woman.
Okay, yeah.
That's their first album. The second album, I believe, is out of print. I would buy it in a second if I found it, but it's going on eBay for quite a lot. CDs should be much cheaper. You can get the Greatest Hits album on vinyl for about the same price as Viva La Woman. Maybe I have to go get the other one because that one was like on a limited press, I think, or release. So limited quantity. So I think you could probably get it from your local record store. I got a bunch of their stuff used from Amazon store online. You can probably get a lot of it digitally. Newer releases like Sean Lennon stuff, like any stuff he's putting out is on his website, Chimera Music. You can get some of that stuff there.
Yeah, well, there seems to be a bit of a return of it. Sort of waves on and off. This return.
Yeah.
Hang on, I just hit my mic. This return to sort of vinyl. I know you just got yourself a new turntable, and so have I. I've upgraded my turntable, and I know you have as well. So there's, some of us are sort of getting back into vinyl because, because if you remember, we went from vinyl and then, and cassettes, it's handy, and then, I sort of, I skipped 8-track there, but cassettes, and then CDs come out, was just fantastic, and then people were saying, hey, no, the sound isn't as good, it's compressed and all the rest of it, and then digital came, and a lot of us would say, well, that sound is compressed as well. You really need it on vinyl if you want to hear it, What I've found is, I think you have too, is that now some of the vinyl, especially here, I'm in Tasmania, and it's anything second-hand vinyl is expensive. It wasn't more than 10 years ago where a lot of this stuff was being thrown out, or it was at charity shops for $1. I will tell you, I've seen it here in Tasmania. Those very things that would say $1 or $5, they're now $30 and $60 Australian. Which is it's not exactly pesos. I mean,
well, you sent me that video about that, didn't you? I watched almost all of it, if not the whole thing, and that was like, those guys were picking stuff up at the charity shops and whatever for nothing, and then just like... Yeah, well,
I think that time has come and gone because a lot of vinyl has gone to the dump, or, it's gone. And like I know some of my vinyl ended up being Frisbees, okay?
Yeah.
They got Frisbee down the street. So now if you want it, a lot of it's gone, and it's not a reissue. And it's not cheap either. If you notice, the reissues are 60, 70, 80, I'm talking in Aussie dollars. I'm sure it's a lot cheaper in US dollars.
It depends, because I can go pick up the re-release of Purple Rain on vinyl for $25, but then like a higher, and it depends too on what they put it on, because there's some vinyl they're putting it on like 180 gram audiophile vinyl, so to justify the higher price. And I don't know that my ear is discerning enough to detect it. I will say that I do notice it sounds different. Yeah, I don't know if it sounds better. It definitely sounds different.
So did you, recently get so did you get the Purple Rain one? Did you get that?
I did not, no. I got Queen's Greatest Hits. I've been thinking about Purple Rain. I like the album, but I just don't know if I like it enough to own it on vinyl. It's a great album, but
and I know you've got some Pink Floyd on vinyl.
I bought Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here on vinyl, which is probably my favorite album of theirs.
And how much was that? Because that was recent, so it'd be
that was $45 American, and Cibo Matto was also $45 American.
That's about $60 Aussie, yeah. Maybe roughly. I don't know. It's roughly that. So the price is sort of roughly the same, but it seems like there's just something about you remember the old days where $5.99, $6.99, $7.99.
Yeah.
And I know about inflation and all those things. So it's just a psychological barrier we have to jump to go from.
Yeah.
Well, I got it for $8.99 and now I'm paying $60.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably, if you go to the inflation calculator, it's probably about the same.
Probably about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because back when I was $8.99, you were probably making $3 an hour, if that.
That's right.
It's 3 hours of work. So,
that's right. It would be something like that. Yeah. We're just talking roughly here. We're just being roughly. Anyway. So anything else you'd like to add before I let you go, Frank?
I think that's it. I mean, I think that's a good introduction to them. You can look them up. Each of the band members, you can look them up and see their solo career. Miho Hattori had one solo album. She's headlining other groups now. Yuka Honda has a number of rather unique solo albums and a couple of collaborations she did. One of which I would call attention to, one called If by Yes is the name of the band. It's Yuka Honda and someone else on vocals, released by Sean Lennon's label. I thought that album was pretty good. Discovered that one by accident too.
The name of the band is If by Yes?
If by Yes.
Yeah, well, I haven't come across that one. No, and I'm a big fan of Yes. If you look back in our back catalogue, we did 3-hour Philosopher Rock on the band Yes.
I remember those episodes. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
One of the earliest ones, I think, that Brian and I did, but but
no relation.
Yes. No relation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we better make that
no
clear.
relation.
No relation. Okay.
I think those would be some of the newer collaborations worth checking out. Smokey and Miho, definitely check those ones out. Those were, one of them was kind of, I think, their own stuff in English or like covers of other old Brazilian songs. And then they did one of the two albums was they covered 5 songs by Baden Powell, regarded as probably one of the best guitarists in the world, and Brazilian music's one of the best Brazilian musicians, at least he's regarded as such. They recovered
that's
his...
who I was thinking of. That's the Brazilian guitarist. That's, sorry if that was confusing earlier, listeners. That's the guy I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that album is called Tempo de Amor, songs by Baden Powell, and they have the lyrics in there. It looks like a bunch of these are like old songs. It's an interesting story with those because Baden Powell was like a very sincere Christian he became so at one time in his life, and he credits that with being able to give up smoking and drinking alcohol, I think. For sure smoking, but if listeners want to check something out, first 2 Cibo Matto albums, Smokey and Miho, If by Yes. And Sean Lennon's album, Friendly Fire, was, I thought, really good too.
All right, great. Well, thanks for your time, Frank. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
And,
I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, cheers, mate. Hooroo.
Hooroo.